Okay.
Occult Confessions is brought to you commercial-free through the generous support of our patrons. Visit occultconfessions.com and click on Donate to help keep the history of the occult on the digital airwaves. In September 1177, Pope Alexander III sent a man sometimes described as his personal physician, Master Philip, to deliver a letter to Prester John, a Nestorian Christian African emperor who probably did not exist. The Prester, who was in all likelihood imaginary, had written to Alexander 12 years earlier, but Alexander had been embroiled in intense political conflict with the Holy Roman Emperor and was rivaled by no fewer than 4 anti-popes, until striking a truce with Frederick Barbarossa near the end of his long papacy. Master Philip claimed to have met one of the Prester's representatives while on pilgrimage to the Holy Land, who told Philip that his master was a Nestorian Christian. Alexander charged Philip with the mission to reconnect with this man and pass on a message of friendship to Prester John, but no record of Philip's mission has survived. In fact, there were no further reports of Philip's progress after he left Alexander's court. It appears that the intrepid doctor simply vanished. My name is Dr. Rob C. Thompson, welcoming you to Occult Confessions, our second episode on occult disappearances. I'm joined this day by Malik Hopkins, our African voice king.
How you doing?
What's up, man?
Not much.
Born to play a priest king of Africa?
Indeed. I live for this.
And Andrew Mims, whose title shall remain unspoken.
I have not attempted to speak it lately. I'm just, I can't expend the energy.
So, I think this is going to end up being a double episode, but we're going to meet a character, Sir John de Mandeville, and Min's going to be playing that character. Malik's going to be playing Prester John for us, doing some of those good old primary resources. But these two guys are also going to be sitting in on the episode talking to us about the fascinating legend of Prester John. Have you guys ever heard of Prester John?
I have not.
This is new to me.
First time, yeah. Big deal in the medieval period. Big legend, but not really one that's carried forward much into the present day.
It's a shame.
It is a shame. I think when you hear the tale, yeah, you're going to wish there was more Prester John in the world.
Will it be explained what exactly the 4 anti-popes were?
Yes. I am going to get into the anti-popes. I know anti-popes just sound badass, don't they?
It really does. Like, it sounds like somebody that, like, the Pope is just going to be, like, fighting. Like, it's just going to be, like, just a straight up, like, Dragon Ball fight.
Let's budge it out. We, the members of the secret order of alchemical actors, do solemnly commit ourselves to a full and honest telling of the history of the occult as far as we know it. Malik.
Guess I missed the memo.
Just blanked on
that. Sorry.
It took me 5 years. It took me being on this show for 5 years to get it.
Don't worry, fellas. I'll get there eventually.
All right, let's get into this. Pope Alexander III was born in Siena as Rolandus, because remember, the popes take new names when they get popified.
Right.
He was probably...
They get poped.
They get poped. Pope me. He was probably of the Bandinelli family, Rolandus Bandinelli. He taught theology at Bologna, where he was probably a student, but there were no known theological works extant to his name, so not really known as a scholar. He was a canon in Pisa, which is a clerical office, not a thing you'd shoot balls out of.
Shame.
Yeah. Just a little priest hurling heavy objects at people.
Just yeeting things off of ships and other ships.
So that was in Pisa, where Pope Eugenius III met him in October of 1148. And was apparently impressed enough to send for him to come to Rome. There, Eugenius promoted the young Rolandus to the cardinate, serving as cardinal priest of St. Mark's and then chancellor of Rome, an office responsible for diplomatic correspondence. So he wrote a lot of letters back and forth to the heads of state in Europe. He became a chancellor in 1153 and held the role through the one-year reign of Anastasius IV. Kind of an old dude, Anastasius. Didn't make it for long. What can you do?
Yeah.
And then the 5-year pontificate of Adrian IV, the only British pope ever. Adrian.
We learned that lesson the hard way.
Well, we got an
Never
American
again.
now.
We do, and is the American is the only the second native English speaker in the history of the papacy. Yeah.
Huh.
Adrian inadvertently started the long-standing feud between the future pope and the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa. Adrian, as we said, the only British pope, and the only, as I'm saying, native English-speaking pope until the present day, he had an eventful papacy. It was, what did I say, 5 years? But a lot happened in 5 years. He had successfully beaten the heretic Arnold of Brescia. Arnold led a movement in Rome for self-rule, rather than ecclesiastical rule. So to be clear, Arnold is not trying to be pope. There's a pope, and the pope is the secular and spiritual master of Rome. But this guy Arnold is like, oh, no, you're not. Rome's got its own leader.
Secular and spiritual?
Yeah, but Arnold wants to be the secular leader. He wants Rome to be self-ruled. This is like the era of Rome's communes.
Yeah, so Arnie wanted just to split.
Yes, you can live here, but you aren't in charge. Adrian, this was a source of conflict for both Adrian and Alexander, who continued to contend with this years after Arnold was burned at the stake. So we're in the Adrian years. We're looking forward to the Alexander years when we meet Prester John and send letters back and forth to him. But all the way back in the Adrian years, we're having this Roman problem, and it just doesn't go away. Rome keeps wanting to rule itself. No taxation without representation. So, I don't think they said that.
I think they probably said it in Latin.
Yeah, sure. Adrian was, or Italian. Adrian was also worried about William, King of Sicily, potentially attacking the city. He had hoped for Barbarossa's assistance, Frederick Barbarossa, Holy Roman Emperor, against Sicily, and Barbarossa looked to Adrian to consecrate his coronation. He wanted the blessing of the Pope to be Holy Roman Emperor.
Yeah, I mean, holy's in the name.
Right. You're not holy, you're not Roman, you're not an emperor, and yet this is your title. You need to get at least somebody to say it's okay.
Yeah, like at least one of the three.
Right. At least be holy, man. So this was the exchange Adrian was imagining. I will bless you and your coronation, and in exchange you get Sicily off my back, because Sicily's right down there. It's at the bottom of the boot. When Barbarossa arrived, he was crowned king of all Christendom, but there were some symbolic slights exchanged between the Pope and the Emperor took umbrage over a mural describing the king as liegeman to the Pope, who gives the king his crown. So we're talking about like really minor stuff. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's like, the Pope looked left when he should have looked right. And if, the respect was there, then he would have,
zigged when he should have zagged.
Yeah, held his hand longer, that kind of stuff. But then this mural is up on the wall that's suggesting that Pope comes first and Holy Roman Emperor or Emperor King comes second. And Barbarossa is like, no, nobody comes before me. So Barbarossa did not remain to protect Adrian against the Sicilians or the Romans, who were sympathetic to Arnold's way of thinking. Rolandus traveled with another cardinal, Bernard, to Bascagnon, home of Frederick I. Bascanson? Biscanson. Home of Freddy I at the time of Barbarossa's wedding. Okay, so phase 2, right? Holy Roman Emperor comes down to Rome to get blessing at the coronation, and, there's some tension there. It doesn't go so well. He goes home. The Pope, Adrian, says, okay, things aren't going well. I'm going to send my guy, Rolandus, who's going to end up being Pope Alexander. He doesn't know that, right? But going to send my boy Rolandus and this other dude, Bernard, to the Holy Roman Emperor's wedding. Make nice with him. Be my diplomats. So off they go. They bore a message from Adrian, complaining that Barbarossa hadn't done enough to recover Eskil of Lund, Archbishop of Scandinavia, who had been abducted by certain godless and infamous men.
That's a hell of a title. Vikings, probably,
Yes,
I assume.
Some sort of barbarians, yeah. I mean, it's Scandinavia.
Yeah.
One of the cardinals, probably Bernard, attempted to assert the Pope's authority over the secular ruler, and Frederick did not take kindly to this, saying his power came from God and not Adrian. So, I mean, they're coming here with a complaint, which is not a great way to begin, but the idea is like, hey, guys, can you help the Pope out every once in a while? Come on now.
Just Just don't be a dick. Just
don't be a dick. Aren't we on the same team? But then Bernard says a few things that the Holy Roman Emperor doesn't like so much. Barbarossa is incensed and threatened to bring an army against Adrian, who he said was not a true pope because his father, Robert Breakspear, was a priest. Let me say that again. His father, Robert Breakspear, was a priest, which means that my man was illegitimate. The Pope.
So the Pope was illegitimate because his dad was a priest?
Yeah, he was just going into the family business.
Yeah, like I would assume that would, make you pretty qualified.
Yeah, who's more qualified than a priest's kid? While it's certainly rude to scold an imperial emperor at his wedding, much of this was likely spurred by Reynaud, Archbishop of Cologne, a close advisor to Barbarossa. The emperor was probably illiterate. Now remember, this is the medieval period, so I have to say probably a lot. We don't really know. But probably the Holy Roman Emperor could not read.
Well, in the medieval period, most people
It was optional.
Yeah,
it was optional. Even at the top of the food chain, sometimes you just didn't bother. So we had a guy who did his reading for him, which, can pose some problems. So this was Reynaud, Archbishop of Cologne. He was the reader. He would translate written messages to the emperor. Reynaud was no fan of Adrian and happened to translate the Pope's Latin in a way that upset Barbarossa and led to a whole lot of tense diplomatic back and forth. You got a lot of power if you're the one reading.
Yeah.
And the emperor can't read. As one of the Pope's messengers at this ill-fated communication, Rolandus, soon to be Alexander III, made himself a decades-long enemy. And when Sicily defeated the Pope's allies and the Pope aligned with Sicily as a counterweight to Barbarossa, this made things even worse. So this is all happening under Adrian, but it happens that Alexander is right in the middle of all of this. He's not even Pope yet, and the emperor does not like him.
Just the way you said that just for some reason just brought me to Clerks. I'm not even supposed to be here today.
This is a Kevin Smith movie.
I'm not even Pope yet, guys.
Why did Kevin Smith not do this? Why isn't this the plot of Mallrats? So, Adrian, maybe it is. Adrian died on the 1st of September, 1159, and the political squabbling of his reign led the cardinals to elect not one, but here you go, Mibs, 2 popes.
Mom, what? But they let them have 2 popes. Why do I only get 1?
Ben Affleck's character in Mallrats, right? The fashionable man. So, the cardinal who received a majority of the vote was Rolandus, and he chose the name Alexander III. But a minority of cardinals then elected their own pope, the cardinal priest of St. Cecilia, Octavian, who took the name Victor IV. Just to rub it in, right? If you're going to be the loser, call yourself the victor.
Exactly.
I never thought of it that way.
Barbarossa convened a council claiming the emperor was the only possible arbiter to choose a pope when the church was divided. But Alexander refused to attend because, again, he knows Barbarossa is not his biggest fan. Saying only the Pope could gather such a council, Victor was named Pope and Alexander was excommunicated. But for his part, Alexander excommunicated the Holy Roman Emperor. So...
You can't fire me. I quit.
Yeah. And then the kings of England, France, and Spain gathered and selected Alexander as the rightful pope. So, all of this results in Alexander III being the pope, and Victor is the first anti-pope. Yeah.
Okay, so there's anti-pope 1.
Anti-Pope 1 is Victor, chosen by a minority, upheld by the Holy Roman Emperor, but the Holy Roman Emperor is not in charge here. The cardinals are, and the other heads of Europe sort of all align against him. So it's Alexander who is the Pope. Whew. Barbarossa forced Alexander from the Papal States, and he fled to Sicily and then to France. He was back in Rome in 1165 when Victor died, but could not prevent another anti-pope, Pascal III, from being crowned in his place. In fact, 4 anti-popes reigned during Alexander's papacy as Alexander moved around between the loyal cities of southern Italy. So Rome ain't with him, but there are places in Italy that are with him. France and England mostly with him, but it's complicated. We'll get there. Medieval politics, man.
Just too many popes.
Too many popes. One's enough. A league of Italian city-states, including Verona, Padua, Vicenza, and Venice, allied against Barbarossa and finally succeeded in tossing Barbarossa out of Italy. With his defeat, Barbarossa finally recognized Alexander as the true pope, ending the reign of anti-popes, and Alexander lifted the emperor's excommunication and named his last anti-pope, Calixtus III, to a church office.
Okay, but like all of the anti-popes have like really cool names.
Yeah. They're a little Bond villainy, aren't they?
Yeah, like Calixtus sounds like the name of a dragon.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And now because we got Pope Van Kleis.
So, Alexander likely learned from these events that there was no benefit in directly confronting secular rulers. Let's talk about his conflict with the British, namely around the very famous case of Thomas Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury. Becket refused to sign the English King Henry II's Constitutions of Clarendon. Now, the purpose of this document, if you aren't medieval scholars, was to weaken the church's legal authority in England. And an unfortunate series of events culminated in the Archbishop's assassination. Huge scandal at the time. Pretty decent Wikipedia page on it if you want to learn more about the series of events that led to the assassination of Thomas Becket. But basically, I mean, in a nutshell, before I go into, my history here, Thomas Becket was, I think he was a chancellor under Henry II. He's like hanging out with the secular king. He's a churchman, but he's pretty chill. Like, he's a cool dude. And Henry's like, you'd be a pretty badass archbishop. You're so cool. We party. We have a good time together. And then Becket...
Which really is the best thing, the thing to look for in an archbishop.
Hey, yeah. All you want in an archbishop is a guy you can have a beer with.
Exactly.
So Becket gets to Canterbury, and suddenly, like, he goes, like, holier than thou. He gets super hardcore. There's this legend of him, like, literally donning a shirt made of hair, so that he could live in perpetual discomfort in emulation of Christ.
Sounds itchy.
That
sounds so itchy.
Yeah.
All right. How did he come into possession of the hair shirt?
He's the archbishop. He just shaved all the priests. and the nuns.
Just shaved the entire clergy just to make this incredibly uncomfortable shirt.
Yep, starts putting his shirt together. But I mean, this is the gist, right? Henry thought he was getting one kind of guy, and he got a very different guy. And then he tries to, assert secular authority over the church, and Becket just won't have it. And they sort of like chase each other back and forth around Europe. So in 1170, the archbishop had excommunicated 3 English lords, and legend says, Henry wondered aloud, "Will no one rid me of this turbulent priest?"
That sounds like a Shakespeare line.
Yeah, doesn't it? Yeah, it's famous line. He probably never spoke it. Nobody really knows, but it's well worded, right? 4 of his knights arguably took it upon themselves to do just that. So 4 knights traveled to the cathedral in Canterbury. They set their swords outside of the cathedral in order to confront the archbishop, but when he refused to go with them to see the king, they went outside, retrieved their weapons, and killed him.
These 4 knights separate from the
anti-popes, yeah, separate guys. But wouldn't it be cool if the anti-popes...
They just decided to become knights after and just like...
start killing...
Hey, you want to go kill this guy?
Boy, that is some buddy comedy right there. That's the plot of The Hangover.
I mean, they're the anti-popes. I wouldn't think they're pacifists or anything.
They got anti right in their name.
Exactly.
So, Alexander did not blame Henry for the murder. Instead, he excommunicated the 4 knights, who spent the next 14 years on a journey to the Holy Lands to seek penance. It's really a hell of a story.
Yeah, like I would watch this movie.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Alexander had advised Becket, who was apparently a kind of like friend. They communicated anyway a lot with each other, the Pope and the Archbishop. And Alexander said, "Don't be too hasty or rash. Seek the goodwill of the king." But Becket never did this. But Alexander was also sympathetic to Becket, and he canonized Becket after his death, and in 1174 had Henry perform a public act of contrition and penance. Henry II, King of England, walked barefoot through Canterbury as he was whipped by bishops and monks, and then spent a night at Thomas Becket's tomb. But Alexander also promoted Henry's rights over Ireland. So it seems weird, right? There's this back and forth between the Pope and the secular authorities. It seems like the Pope is nobody, right? Why would we listen to him? But he does have a lot of political sway. A lot of people listen to him. A lot of people feel that they owe their soul and the future of their soul to the Pope, right?
Yeah.
So he has the ability to get the kings to do these things if he's in the right political position.
Yeah, like the Pope's important. Understatement of the year.
He's a major dude.
You gotta have the anti-Pope.
Yeah.
Chapter 2. I didn't label the last one Chapter 1, but it was Chapter 1. Let's meet Alexander. Chapter 2 is the letter. Ready for the letter?
I'm ready for the letter. Is it Q?
I hope not.
Is it Q?
I'd settle for a V.
In his quarrel with Barbarossa, Pope Alexander was in bad need of allies, which is why he was at least interested in the potential diplomatic opening presented by the Prester John letter. The letter arrived sometime around 1165 and was addressed to Barbarossa, although the Pope also received a copy. It was written in Latin by someone in German territory and seems to have been intended as a criticism or satire of Barbarossa. Let's hear a little bit of that letter.
It has been reported to our Majesty that you esteem our excellency, and that mention of our High One has reached you. And we have learned through our delegates that you should wish to send us some entertainments and trifles, which would satisfy our righteousness. Of course, we are only human, and take it in good faith. And through our delegate, we transmit to you some things, for we wish and long to know if, as with us, you hold the true faith, and if you, through all things, believe our Lord Jesus Christ. While we know ourselves to be mortal, the little Greeks regard you as God, while we know that you are mortal and subject to human infirmities. Because of the usual munificence of our liberality, if there is anything you should desire for your pleasure, make it known to us through our delegate through a small note of your esteem, and you shall have it for the asking. Receive the hawkweed in our name, and use it for your own sake, because we gladly use your jar of unguent in order that we mutually strengthen and corroborate our bodily strength, and, on account of our art, respect and consider our gift.
Now this opening feels a little sarcastic, or at least condescending. The Prester does not write asking anything of the Emperor, but rather writes to say that he heard the Emperor, holds the Prester in high esteem, and wants to send him things. Dear friend, I heard you think I'm cool and want to give me stuff.
I, too, try to start friendships like that.
Hey, dude. The Prester wonders if the Holy Roman Emperor believes in Jesus Christ. The Holy Roman Emperor. And mocks the little Greeks who regard the Emperor as a god when the Prester knows he's just a dude. If the Emperor should ever want anything, he need only send a note. Telling the Prester, right? Marking his esteem for the Prester. Letting him, hey man, you're really cool. I love you. You're the best. Can I have some stuff?
Hey, baby.
That's the same kind of logic that my fiance gives when she wants me to grab her a Pepsi from the fridge.
Oh, you're the best, Mims.
Yeah, just hey, I love you. Give me a drink.
You're so special.
And I'll do it.
Those last voice lines you recorded were so good. I could really use. So, he need only send a note for his esteem, and he shall have it, because the Prester is much better off, it seems, than the Holy Roman Emperor. In the meantime, here's some hawkweed, which, by the way, is a little bit like a dandelion.
I was wondering that.
John?
I, Prester John, am Lord of lords and surpass, in all riches which are under the heaven, and virtue and in power. All the kings of the wide world, 72 kings, are tributaries to us. Our magnificence dominates the 3 Indians, and our land extends from farthest India, where the body of St. Thomas and Apostle rests, the place where the sun rises, and returns by the slopes of the Babylonian desert near the Tower of Babel. In our country are born and raised elephants, dromedaries, camels, hippopotami, crocodiles, methagolanari, Gamathaturnus, Thincerite, panthers, aurochs, white and red lions, white bears, white merlins, silent cicadas, griffins, tigers, llamas, hyenas, wild oxen, archers, wild men, horned men, fawns, satyrs, and women on the same kind, pygmies, dog-headed men, giants, whose height is 40 cubits, one-eyed men, 40 whole cubits, one-eyed men, cyclops, and a bird, which is called the phoenix, and almost all kinds of animals that are under heaven.
That is amazing.
So,
Is it still me?
No, you're good.
Okay.
no,
We should discuss this
I'm
list.
baffled
I
by the
agree.
list. Like,
So dromedaries are camels, and camels are dromedaries. I believe he's differentiating maybe between the 1 and the 2 hump varieties there.
Possibly.
But the Methagallianari, the Camathatiner, the Thincerate, these are just made up. Nobody knows exactly what these are meant to refer to.
as soon as we got to silent cicadas, I was just like, something's funky here. And then immediately after is griffins, and I'm just like, oh, something's definitely funky here.
Oh,
gets
what's
weirder and
next?
weirder.
The black and white striped horses.
But the
Yeah.
dog-headed men, I mean, of course.
Yeah, horned men.
Yeah, no problem there.
Yeah, just
Yeah, it just gets stranger and stranger.
The cockatrice.
The letter visits various lands under the Prester's domain, a list that would inspire the medieval fabulist John de Mandeville, story coming soon. There is a land that flows with honey and milk, where no venomous creatures reside, another where a river flows out of a paradise containing many precious gems, and another where whole pepper grows that lights the forest on fire when it ripens. Burns it down, and then up it comes again. Mount Olympus is within the Prester's borders somehow, even though it's traditionally associated with Greece. And there is a literal sea of sand. Not a desert, mind you, but an actual sea made of sand.
Indeed, the sun moves and swells up in the waves just like all our other seas, and is never still. The sea can be crossed neither by ship or by other means, and for this reason, what type of land may lie beyond is not able to be known. And although it is completely devoid of water, nevertheless diverse kinds of fish are found near the shore on our side, which are the most palatable and tasty to eat and which are seen nowhere else.
When the Prester rides in a procession, he does so with a simple wooden cross out in front of him to remind him of Christ's sacrifice and a golden urn of earth to remind him that his body will return to the earth. He visits the tomb of David every year, and although his empire's women are very beautiful, the men only have sex with them 4 times a year, and only then for the purposes of procreation. After David's example. David famously.
oh yeah, it completely celibate, right?
4 times a year. I guess on his better years. For all this humility, the Prester assures the Holy Roman Emperor that, in fact, if you can count the stars in heaven and the sand in the sea, then you can calculate the extent of our kingdom and our power. The Prester's people never lie or cheat. He rules over the Amazons and the Brahmani, meaning, the famous Greek legend of the tribe of women, and then the Indian Brahmins. He eats on golden and amethyst tables in his palace where the floors are paved with onyx and the roof is made of ebony.
Oh, expensive.
Nice.
It sounds fancy.
Yeah.
The letter paints a picture that is difficult to accept at face value, as we're saying, with our, phoenixes and cockatrices?
And ramblers, apparently.
Horned goatmen.
Horned goatmen. Griffins.
And it's unlikely that Alexander III did believe the letter at face value. Given the 12 years that elapsed between the letter's arrival and Alexander's response, he probably wasn't sure the Prester was even a real guy. That is until Master Philip, his doctor, remember from the beginning, told him that he'd met one of the Prester's people in Jerusalem. Then he was like, oh, wow. So it really is a dude. It's equally likely that this so-called Prester person was lying as much as the letter, though. The dude in Jerusalem, right? So the legend was strong, yeah. It's like claiming to know Elvis or something, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like creating an urban legend.
I mean, I knew Elvis.
Yeah, I knew.
Good
Elvis.
guy.
Oh yeah, everybody knows Elvis.
So, this wasn't the first time, by the way, that a pope had heard of a Prester. The name had surfaced 20 years earlier, lending a veneer of credence to an otherwise suspicious letter. So I'm trying to make the case for why Alexander would bother writing back in the first place, because this letter is bizarre.
Yeah, like you read that, it's the 1100s version
60,
of a prank call.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what it feels like to the emperor and to the pope. So a very bold prank call.
Yeah, no, like it's like when you call your senator to like with them.
Yeah.
I might be the only one that does that, but like,
What do you say on these calls?
I have beef with Andy Harris.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
The representative down here.
Yep.
So, it's 1144, so we're going back in time a couple of decades. The Christians had just been routed in the Holy Land by Muslim forces led by Imad el-Din Zangi, founder of the Seljuk dynasty. Follow me here now. This is the founder of a Seljuk dynasty. Not all the Seljuks, not all the dynasties, but one dynasty of the Seljuks. So, Zangi's father was beheaded for treason when he was 10 years old, and Zangi joined the military, rising through the ranks. After leading a successful military expedition in what is now southern Iraq, he became governor in Basra and was then backed the right sultan in a power struggle, which led to him getting promoted to ruler of Syria. So a little of skill, a little bit of luck for him. Then in 1135, the ruler of Damascus, Shams-ul-Mulk Ismail, offered to give his city to Zangi because Ismail's people had turned against him, regarding him as a tyrant. That's one way to get out of trouble. Here you go. They're yours now. But Ismail's mother murdered him to prevent him giving the city away to Zangi. Yes, but we haven't heard the last of her. Zangi laid siege to the city anyway, but eventually struck a truce and left to take over rulership of Baghdad. He besieged the city of Homs next, near the Holy Land, or maybe in the Holy Land. He did this twice, and then Damascus aligned with the Crusaders against him. Didn't take kindly to this, our Seljuk leader. The Byzantine Empire allied with the Crusaders against him as well, and Zangi married Ismail's murderous mother. Remember her? Went back and married her to forge a political alliance with Damascus against the Byzantines and the Crusaders. Finally, Zangi besieged the county of Edessa, the only landlocked state in Outremer, which was 4 states of the Christian Holy Land. Edessa fell, becoming the first Crusader state to return to Muslim rule. The other 3 would remain under church rule until the next century. The siege of Edessa was brutal, lasting 4 months. Sieges are terrible, right?
Yeah.
Like, people are starving. So it was a 4-month siege. It finally ended on Christmas Eve, and it was a severe psychological blow to Europe. Because remember, when they took over the Holy Land, God decided we should have Jerusalem back. Yeah. It belongs to the Christians. The Christians are right. Then here comes this guy. Knocks them upside their head. God has turned against us. God's favor has been lost. So Hugh, you know Hugh.
Oh yeah, Hugh.
The Syrian bishop in Jabula arrived to share good news with the then Pope Eugenius III. Eugenius, we mentioned earlier, had promoted Adrian. He had replaced Lucius II, who died during a protest against the Roman Senate when he was struck by a heavy stone. And he was succeeded by Anastasius, who was that pope who lasted 1 year, and then Adrian. I just love doing the popes.
The very stone that killed the 2 birds?
Yes, yeah, that very stone killed Lucius II.
Yeah, like was that like purpose? Like, did somebody just yeet a stone at the guy?
I guess.
Or like, was it like an accident?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting, the protest against the Roman Senate, like going all the way back to Lucius and before, we've got, the Romans, the actual Roman polis is in quarrel with the church over the rulership of Rome. So I assume that's what's at the core of this. And Lucius just gets out there with the kids doing the protest, just gets out there with the college kids. Someone hits him in the head with a rock. And then comes Eugenius, and then comes Anastasius, and then comes Adrian. And then comes Alexander. So there you go.
Just hell of a lineage.
So it's Hugh we're talking about. Hugh of Jabula. He arrived to tell Pope Eugenius that Prester John had defeated the Muslims in Persia and planned to march his army to Outremer to aid the Crusaders, but was unable to cross the Tigris. So everyone's really depressed. And here comes Hugh. And he says, wait, the priest king of Africa just beat the hell out of the Seljuks.
Something exciting is happening.
Oh, awesome. Go, Jabula, go. He waited for the river to freeze, Prester John, but the weather never got cold enough, and so the Prester took his army and went home.
Well, that didn't work. I'm going home.
It must have been antifreeze.
He beat the like anti-pope.
Anti-pope. The water is anti. It won't freeze.
So, the story of the water-averse conqueror is indeed very strange, right? The man beats the Seljuks, and then he's like, nope.
No, can't do it.
No ice, not gonna do it. But, according to historian Richard Denham, it reflected current events in China. Squeezed by the Jin dynasty to the north and the Song dynasty to the south, the Buddhist general Yaludashi of the Liao dynasty in northeast China moved his army west with 20,000 soldiers and established the Western Liao Empire around current-day Kazakhstan. This is a time when China split into different parts, right? So the Song dynasty and you know, these different dynasties are at war with each other. So this guy just moves west, beats up the Kazakhs and the, Turkmenistan, all the different stands there. He just sort of conquers all that territory.
Just like, fuck China, I'm just going to take the Middle East for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to go live over there. It's more peaceful. At the Battle of Katwan, Dashi defeated the Seljuk Turks, led by Ahmad Sanjar, and captured Sanjar's wife. The Seljuks suffered heavy losses and descended into internal squabbling, effectively breaking their rule. So there's a real guy who was not the priest king of Africa, who was Chinese, who beat the Seljuks. Close enough.
Yeah.
Dashi's dynasty would last until 1218, when the Mongols arrived and, of course, conquered that region. Though not Christian, Dashi was friendly to the local Nestorian Christians, and this fed his legend as Prester John. But Dashi, again, was Chinese, not African. Could there have been, though, an African king of Nestorian Christian belief, even if a practical joker had written the letter to Barbarossa? That's sort of the last chapter for today before we get on to John de Manville and his wackiness. And that chapter is about the Nestorian Christians. You guys know what a Nestorian is?
I do not.
Can't tell you. I
know what a Christian is.
But not a Nestorian. It's a Christian in a nest. A nested Christian sitting on some Easter eggs.
I was about to say, is it like a Russian nesting doll of just like religious people?
Yes. Inside is a tiny little monk that's controlling them all, like Krang.
It's an inside man.
So, the notion of a Christian empire in Africa may stem from Abyssinia or Ethiopia, an empire that rose to power in the medieval period, what was converted to Christianity around the time of Constantine. The ecclesiastical history of Rufinus of Aquileia tells the story of a philosopher from Tyre. There once was a philosopher from Tyre who traveled with two students.
I want to do a diner from Tyre.
He traveled with two students, this philosopher, named Odysseus and Frumentius, to the east. While their ship was docked, the philosopher was slaughtered when the locals discovered that their treaty with the Romans had expired. So,
just like, oh shit, our treaty's gone. Let's kill this guy.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. Not just this guy, but the whole ship. Like, there's a Roman ship sitting in the dock, and then everybody was like, "Wait a second, we're not at peace with the Romans anymore," and they ran on board and killed everybody.
Just because they were no longer like. Yeah, fair enough.
Yep. But luckily, these two kids, Frumentius and Odysseus, were not on the boat at the time. They were under a tree, so they were spared.
So they were just hanging out under a tree?
Yeah.
Kassing.
So, I'm like, and you got to figure, like, there's all these angry guys on the boat. They're like, what are these two guys under the tree? Should we kill them?
Nah, they're fine. They're not on the boat.
They're just tree guys. They're guys under a tree. They're never going to hurt anybody. They're probably not even Roman. But they were. They became slaves to the king, with Frumentius regarded as the more clever of the two. When the king died, the boys were freed, I suppose in the king's will, but the queen asked them to stay until her son was old enough to rule. They agreed, and Frumentius was inspired to begin converting the people of Ethiopia to Christianity, or Abyssinia. When the young king reached the age of majority, Odysseus returned home, and Frumentius traveled to Alexandria to share news of the new converts. Hey, you guys, I got all these Africans to be Christians now. There, he was named a bishop by Athanasius and sent back to continue his mission. Okay, good job, kid.
Go back.
Keep doing it this time, not the Chinese.
Yeah,
right.
Actual African. We found the black guys. Finally.
It's about damn time.
We've been looking for years. Good job, Frumentius. But this is ages ago, Malik, also. This is like 1,000 years before we thought, we found the, so...
Well,
anyway, still, we found him. We found him. It's good.
Yeah.
eventually we got there.
As long as he's there.
Yeah.
In this story, Abyssinia or Ethiopia is called India, owing to some confusion over the geography. Rufinus received the story from Odysseus, or so he says, and letters independent of this story refer to Frumentius as a bishop in Africa. In the mid-4th century, coins began to appear with Greek crosses on them, minted by a succession of mid-4th century rulers. And by the 6th century, King Caleb invaded Yemen to defend the Christians who were being persecuted there and defeated the Yemeni ruler and began to convert the populace. Frumentius became the template for a system whereby the Abuna, or archbishop in Ethiopia, had to be appointed in Alexandria in Egypt. Whenever an Abuna died, the king sent to the patriarch in Alexandria to select a new one. This lasted through the 20th century. The Abuna was not the sole spiritual authority, though, insofar as the king was regarded as both a secular and religious leader with the ability to convene religious councils, which the Abuna could not. The Ethiopian king, in other words, was a Prester, literally a priest king. So, looks like we're getting closer.
It's all coming together.
A significant legend of Ethiopia's Christian tradition is that of the 9 saints. These were historical figures who may have traveled from the Byzantine Empire and Syria in the mid-5th century. These saints may have been driven out of their homeland because of their Miaphysite beliefs. This is like sort of esoteric stuff, but it's theology about the nature of Christ as being both human and divine. Arguments over this exact issue were a significant concern in Eastern Christianity and at the center of Nestorianism. These 9 saints spread out across the region, establishing monasteries and spreading Christian thought and doctrine. The Saint Garima translated the Greek New Testament into the African language of Ge'ez, miraculously assisted by angels. During the Zagwe dynasty, which started in the 12th century, the third king, Yemreha Krestos, started the tradition of carving churches out of living rock. At the start of the 14th century, Lalibela, whose name means the bees obey him, because as a child he'd been swarmed by bees and they didn't sting him, apparently. Well, he built a replica of Jerusalem after the idea came to him in a dream. The Solomonic dynasty overlaps the Zagwe a bit and traces its origin to the union of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba through their son Menelik I. The Solomonic tradition holds that Menelik brought Moses' 10 tablets of the law, or the Ark of the Covenant, to Axum in Ethiopia, making Ethiopia the successor of Israel. Ethiopia is, therefore, according to Ethiopian Christianity, the holiest land on earth and the center of Christianity. Male circumcision on the 8th day after birth and food laws banning the eating of pigs, camels, and shellfish hearken to Judaism, although meat and dairy aren't prepared separately. Churches are constructed after the Jewish temple, with an innermost chamber or Holy of Holies containing a replica of the Ark on which the priest prepares communion. Only priests, deacons, and kings can enter the Holy of Holies. The Ark, or Tablet, is taken out of the church on Timkat, or the day of Christ's Epiphany. His baptism by John is what that means, by what we mean by Epiphany. And the feast day of the saint associated with the church is another day when we take it out and parade it around. You can think about, like the tradition of parading the saints of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
The local church. If it's St. Peter's Day and you're St. Peter's Church, then you take your Peter statue out. On Timkat, male worshippers also immerse themselves in imitation of Christ. The Solomonic legend very likely informed the Falasha, or wanderers, who rose up as a distinct group around the 14th century, calling themselves Beta Israel, or the House of Israel, and spent 300 years in conflict with Ethiopia's Christian rulers.
Now, I have to ask, what exactly is a dynasty? I have a rough idea, but I'm not sure I really knew it.
Yeah, that's exactly a good question. It's generally a hereditary idea. So rulers are passed down from father to son, or father to daughter, or mother to son, but all within the same family. So a dynasty is a single line, and then when that line dies out, we start a new dynasty.
So what is the Duck Dynasty?
Mims, I'll let you field that one.
Look, just because I'm a fat white guy with a beard doesn't mean I know what it is.
Something to do with waterfowls. At the start of the 15th century, Tsar Jakob, one of Ethiopia's greatest rulers, rose to the throne. Jakob recognized that many supposed converts to Christianity, particularly on the outskirts of the empire, were converts in name only. So, not good news. I guess if you really wanted them to be for real, and for political purposes, because the empire's strong, right? So you're like, oh yeah, we're Christians, no big deal.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, no deal. The Kushites in particular were big on, like, I guess painted on Christianity, I guess we'd call it, because they maintained belief in good and evil spirits, and they continued to employ sorcerers.
Oh.
Hold up.
She's a witch.
Employ sorcerers, like, there was just like, yeah, that's Chuck Wizards over there. He's
Chuck Wizards.
It's Wizards R Us around the corner.
Yeah, it's just like we pay him to do,
Wizard shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is Jimmy Lightning.
I mean, it's like lifting curses and that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Jakob pressed his abunas, he had two, by the way, which were, like our bishops, right, our archbishops, to recruit priests, and divided the kingdom into sections, each with their own monastery. So he's trying to spread Christianity this way. He banned the practice of consulting shamans and offered sacrifices the offering of sacrifices to any god but Yahweh. You can still make sacrifices to Yahweh. All right? Just not all the other gods. He had Christians affix a cross to their belongings.
So, like, hey, I have this cart and an oxen.
Yes.
Just put a cross on
Put a
it?
cross on both, the cart and the oxen. Also your shirt. Also you.
Just wearing like the scarlet letter.
Yeah, but it's
She's
a good
crossing her
thing.
chest.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, for a good reason.
Good. The golden letter, the golden cross. And enforced strict observance of fasting and holy days. For a fast, by the way, Ethiopians eat a vegan diet once a day and refrain from sex. There's 7 types of fast for Orthodox Christians, including a fast every Wednesday and Friday, and a 55-day fast during Lent. Jakob required Christians to have a confessor and encouraged the cult of Mary, prescribing readings about her miracles to the churches. He also instituted 33 major annual feasts in Mary's honor. Jakob was dictatorial and more than a bit hypocritical, maintaining polygamous relationships throughout his own life. But Ethiopian Christianity and literature thrived during his reign.
So do as I do, not as I say.
Yeah, pretty
or
much.
do as I say, not as I do.
Christ wants this, but
But I don't
a
have
man's
to do
got a
it.
harem. Yeah. Jakob, however, ruled around 1400, more than 2 centuries after the deaths of Alexander and Barbarossa, so he couldn't have been Prester John. The Solomonic dynasty itself, despite its purportedly ancient origins, began 100 years after Europe's rulers received the Prester John letter. The Zagwe dynasty ruled in Ethiopia when Philip met the Prester's representative, but the Zagwes had very little contact with Europe. It's possible the Zagwe emissary had traveled to Jerusalem, or that a long tradition of Christianity in Ethiopia inspired a German satirist in composing the Prester letter. But I do want to say again that Ethiopia viewed itself as the Holy Land. Like, what's the point? They don't need the Holy Land. They are the Holy Land. There's no reason to go there. So,
I have my own.
yeah, it is this. We are there. To what extent, then, could Ethiopia's African Christians be described as Nestorian, as Philip told Alexander? Finally getting to the question of what Nestorians are. In the 5th century, Nestorius argued that Christ was not God incarnate in Mary's womb, but rather God inspired, that the Word came to Christ in his human nature and associated with him at the incarnation. For the Nestorians, Christ had 2 natures, one fully divine and one fully human, whereas the more orthodox interpretation viewed Christ with one nature as only fully divine. To put it another way, the Nestorians regarded Mary as the mother of Christ, whereas the Orthodox viewed Mary as the mother of God. Nestorius did not originate this theology. He trained in the tradition rooted in Antioch in Syria and rose from bishop to become the patriarch in Constantinople. Nestorius gave this theology prominence, prompting the church, at the urging of the bishop of Alexandria, Cyril, to declare it a heresy. Nestorian Christianity remained popular in Persia and traveled as far as China during the Tang dynasty, but Ethiopian Christianity is not exactly Nestorianism, although it has a Nestorian feel. Ethiopians believe Christ has one nature with the divine and the human fused together in the womb or at Christ's baptism. Ethiopians also believe in traducianism, that the soul of a child is transmitted somehow from the parents. Like your soul comes out of your parents' souls. They sort of
just parts of the souls
merge together. Yeah.
Okay.
And they famously keep Enoch in their Bible and were an early source for the West's exposure to the text. There are other interesting features of Ethiopian orthodoxy. They have their own calendar, developed in part by Zara Yacob. It's a solar calendar with 12 months of 30 days and 1 month of 5 or 6 days. The calendar is 8 years behind our Western Gregorian calendar, with a new year on September 11th or 12th, the end of the rainy season. Some Ethiopians observe a 2-day Sabbath lasting through Saturday and Sunday, and most Orthodox Ethiopians do not take communion because there are a variety of prohibitions around the act. To take the Eucharist, you must have fasted for 18 hours, abstained from sex, and have no wounds or mucus. Menstruating or postpartum women are not even allowed inside the church.
No wounds or like... If you have a cold?
Yes, no, you can't take it. So they really only take it like once a year, if that. It's rare that they take communion. It's not like, American Christians where it's happening every Sunday.
Yeah.
You take it almost never. Yeah, there's a lot of prohibitions. All right, that's it. We did it. We finished Prester John Part 1. What are your thoughts?
Well, I knew that, because, I've done, a little bit of research on, apocryphal, biblical text and stuff, and I know that I knew that Enoch was in Ethiopian Bibles. Mm-hmm. Never knew why.
It was actually found there. Enoch came out of Abyssinia back to the west. Came from the west to Abyssinia back to the west, or to Ethiopia and back to the west. I think it just happened to be a text that they were exposed to, and the Ethiopians are not really keen to take the West's view on Christianity and say, oh, they know better than us. The Ethiopians are the Holy Land. They know best about Christianity.
It's really cool seeing these different ideals and how are the same religion but branched off in different ways, and still the same core but expressed in different ways.
Yeah.
And different dynasties, if you will.
Yes.
Duck and non-duck.
Duck and non-duck. They also have a lot more interesting names back then. I mean, imagine being named Sanjar. I mean, that'd be...
Sanjar.
Sounds pretty cool. Well, and Hugh. Hey, Hugh. Hugh Jazz?
Hugh Jazz. I hereby adjourn and declare closed this meeting at the Secret Order of Alchemical Actors until such a time as we get together and do it again. My name is Rob C. Thompson. I am joined by Malik Hopkins, our Priest King of Africa.
Howdy.
You're saying goodbye.
See ya.
Andrew
Glad
Mims.
to be here with you.
Unhowdy.
Andrew Mims gives us an unhowdy. All right, then. Next time on Occult Confessions, we are going to do part 2 of our conversation about Prester John. We're going to get into the story of Sir John de Mandeville.